What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another review for My Hero Academia. I will be talking about and discussing chapter 177, which was entitled At the Construction Site. And this actually continues our fight and confrontation between Deku going up against Gentle. And this was just yet another enjoyable chapter for me this week for MHA. And I think the aspect of this chapter that I really enjoyed was just getting to see the versatility coming from Gentle using his quirk of elasticity within the environment of the construction site. Because from last chapter to this chapter, we moved from the street location to this construction site, and this greatly gave the advantage over to Gentle. Like, Deku could not really hold his own very well within this situation, considering that Gentle turns the entire environment around him into a bouncy castle to where he used the steel beams as trampolines and basically, like Gran Torino, just zoomed around the room. That was awesome to see. But other aspects of this chapter that I really enjoyed, I definitely loved Brava's character in this chapter, just her facial expressions and just how shocked she was during certain moments when Deku and Gentle were talking. I really do like her character in those situations, but it's also just the dynamic between Deku and Gentle I really like as well, because you have Gentle, who is the gentleman criminal, politely asking Deku, hey, let me infiltrate UA, just, turn a blind eye and everything will be okay. And Deku's like, no, I am not going to turn a blind eye to this situation. This dynamic of just the goofiness of Gentle with the seriousness of Deku just makes this chapter for me. But with the ending of this chapter, Horikoshi is teasing us with the reveal of Brava's quirk. Like, I really want to know what her quirk is and what she is able to do with it, because just from what I am getting from the vibe by the ending of this chapter, I am predicting that Gentle and Brava will escape from Deku somehow next chapter, thanks to Brava's quirk. Because if she has to ask permission, or at least tell Gentle, it's like, hey, why don't I use my quirk? It's got to be a very significant or powerful quirk to help them within this situation and to get away from Deku. That way they can continue on their mission to infiltrate UA. So I am very curious to see where this is going to go with this reveal next week. But for right now, let's go back to the beginning of this chapter and just dive in, discuss, and talk about what transpired in chapter 177. So we open up with this shot of Deku and Gentle just crashing into this construction site. Debris and dust are flying everywhere, and all of this is being viewed by this elderly man down on the streets who is most likely just out for his morning walk that he does every single day. But you have to be asking yourself the question, why is Horikoshi just throwing in this random old man into this chapter? But later on, it ends up becoming very clear that Gentle is going to be using this old man as a distraction towards Deku. But the funny thing is, he would not have become a distraction if it wasn't for Brava, because as we see with Brava, as she is just running across the rooftops with her small legs, she ends up yelling down to the old man, telling him, oh, you got to get out of this area right now because we're in the middle of a filming shoot. So get out of here right now, let your neighbors know, everything is totally fine. But it's because she said this, she ended up intriguing the old man to where he followed her and was basically asking her, it's like, oh, what are you filming? What channel is it going to be on? When is it going to be broadcasting? So if Brava didn't end up saying that, most likely the old man would have just left right then and there and would not have walked closer to the construction site. So as Brava is making her way over to the construction site, we cut over to Deku and Gentle, who are engaged in a very interesting conversation, to say the least. But before the conversation actually takes place, I love the build up to this moment to when Deku is trying to locate Gentle, the dust and debris, he can't locate him right away. But once the dust settles, we get the reveal that Gentle is hanging from a steel beam from his coat, and he's not even fazed by the predicament that he is in and is still acting the same that he has ever been. And Deku is so thrown off by this. This panel alone really did remind me of like a classic 1950s comic book villain. It's as if like Batman is going up against Crazy Quilt, because here you have the ideologies of two totally different people. You have the goofiness of Gentle going up against the seriousness that is Deku. And the conversation that takes place here really goes to emphasize those 2 points, because on one hand, you have Gentle asking Deku, very politely might I add, hey, can you just turn a blind eye to this situation and just allow us to infiltrate UA? Don't lump us in with those League of Villains, because we're not into murder and pillaging. All we want to do is infiltrate the festival, and that is it. Please allow us to go through with our plan. That's on one hand. The other, we have Deku, who understands the severity of this situation if Gentle and La Brava succeeded in their plans in infiltrating the festival. Not only would the festival end up being canceled, but also the public perception of human society would just continue to decline from there. So there's a lot riding on Deku to stop Gentle and La Brava right here. But the cool thing about this is that I like that gets brought up here is that Deku is kind of doing this for Gentle and La Brava's own good, because he doesn't want them to get stopped by the heroes, and he's basically telling them the alarms are going to go off if you try to infiltrate. But of course, Gentle's like, I don't have to worry about the alarms. La Brava ended up rendering those alarms ineffective. And this is when La Brava shows up, and her reactions in these two panels when she's seeing this conversation take place, and she is like, oh my God, Gentle's begging for his life. And then we go down to the second one, and she's like, he's being convinced. I love these reactions on top of this conversation. This makes this section of the chapter for me. So the conversation goes nowhere, and we continue our fight between Deku and Gentle. And this section really goes to emphasize just how big of an advantage Gentle has over Deku within the construction site, because not only is Gentle's quirk very versatile, but it's also allowing him to outmaneuver Deku, which is very hard to do, because we see Gentle changing the environment around him, changing the steel beams into rubber trampolines, and literally bouncing off the walls Gran Torino style. This is not the first time we've seen a character demonstrate movement like this. We've seen Gran Torino do it. Deku has done this countless times, but what's making Gentle so much different is that his movements are unpredictable. Deku is unable to read and predict Gentle's movements. And the reason for that is not only is Gentle bouncing off of these rubbery steel beams, but Gentle can also bounce off of air itself. So Deku cannot predict where he's going to land, because where he can land can always be a mystery. He can bounce off a steel beam, bounce off the air twice, bounce off another steel beam again, and then hit Deku. This is really versatile and just goes to show that the quirk of elasticity should not be messed with lightly. But even though that Gentle has the advantage in this situation, he still needs to distract Deku long enough for himself and La Brava to escape. That way they can continue with their operation to infiltrate the festival. But what Gentle ends up using as a distraction is actually very smart on his part, because he ends up using Deku's heroism to his own advantage. He ends up dropping one of those steel beams he's been jumping on top of the old man that ended up wandering very close to the construction site. And knowing the type of person that Deku is, who is an aspiring hero, he's a student at UA, he's not the type of person to just let this slide. So he knew that Deku would rush in to try to rescue the old man, but he actually thought he would go for the old man instead of the steel beam. But also, Gentle isn't a bad guy technically for doing this, because he would have just changed the composition of the steel beam to rubber, not allowing the old man to get hurt. So he's still knowing the fact that no one's going to get harmed in this situation, but he thought Deku would go for the old man instead of the steel beam. But even though he went for the steel beam, we got this awesome shot of Deku holding up the steel beam in One For All full cowl, and this just goes to show how much more control and strength Deku is able to harness in his One For All full cowl form. And as we see Gentle and La Brava making their getaway, we see Gentle very cartoonishly changing this crane into a rubber slingshot to where himself and La Brava are going to launch themselves towards UA, and this is damn hilarious. So while Deku is holding up the steel beam, we briefly cut away to Class 1A 15 minutes before the festival is about to begin. Everyone's putting in their final preparations and getting all of their costumes in order. We got this shot of the band, all of them basically wearing matching A-band shirts, minus Bakugo because he's got to be the rebel of the band, where you see Kaminari is just freaking out. He is a ball of nerves. But I am very excited to see what the band has in store for us once the festival actually begins. But I just gotta say, this panel shot of Ashido and Ochiko in their dance uniforms, 10 out of 10. A+ material. But the only students that seem to be concerned about where Deku currently is at the moment is Todoroki and Aoyama. And I really do like the fact that Horikoshi is showing us that Aoyama is concerned about where Deku is. Not only is Deku responsible for lifting him up in the air during the performance, but we've seen the friendship kind of grow between Deku and Aoyama these past couple chapters. But he's cutting it close right now because it's 15 minutes until the start of the festival, and it's an hour and 15 minutes until Class 1A goes on on stage for their performance. So Deku is cutting it close right now, but little does Class 1A know that Deku is currently trying to stop the infiltrators that are going to try to stop the Culture Festival once they infiltrate. Like, that right there, I think, takes precedent at the moment. But all comes to a head in this chapter with that final double spread page cliffhanger, where we see Deku lifting up that steel beam with one hand while he's flicking off long-range attacks at Gentle and Brava. Gentle dodges with his rubbery air technique, but this is teasing us right now with Brava's quirk. I am very curious to know what Brava's quirk is and what she is able to do, because is it powerful? What can she exactly do? What is her power? I am very curious right now, because I can bet you that with the next chapter, we will see the end of the confrontation between Deku, Gentle, and Brava, and some way or another, it's going to be due to Brava's quirk. So she might be responsible for getting Gentle and herself out of this situation and maybe subduing Deku, and they might be able to infiltrate the Culture Festival, and this might actually stall Deku even longer to where he might not even make it on time. So I'm very, very curious to see where this is going to go next chapter. Anyway, guys, that's going to be it for my review on chapter 177. I really enjoyed the content we got this week for My Hero Academia, and I am really looking forward to the conclusion of this fight next week. But I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts on this week's latest chapter. What did you like? What did you dislike? And what are your thoughts and theories about Brava's quirk? Leave that all down in the comments below, guys. I'm really curious on what you think her power is going to be. But if you guys want to continue the conversation outside of YouTube, feel free to follow me on Twitter, guys. A link can also be found in the description down below. But get excited next week, guys, because not only will I be continuing with my My Hero Academia manga reviews, but season 3 of the anime is going to be starting next week as well. Get hyped for that, because I'm going to have live reactions and reviews on the way for this channel. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to just watch this upcoming season with all of you guys. But that's going to do it for me, guys. Until next week, when we get chapter 178 of My Hero Academia and episode 1 of season 3 of My Hero Academia, the anime. I'll talk with you guys later, but remember, guys, Plus Ultra!